Hi, everybody. It's Curtis from Real English Conversations, and today Amy and I are continuing our discussion on learning languages. Be sure to listen to the end of the episode for the Real English tip, which will give you an example on what to say when you're late. Welcome to RealEnglishConversations.com,
the podcast where you can study the art of real English conversation while listening to fun and interesting topics. All right, welcome back to part 2 of our episode about learning languages from Real English Conversations. My name is Amy, and I'm here with Curtis. And what's the next topic that we're going to be discussing?
Well, last time we were talking about learning in the classroom, learning through a textbook. I just want to describe how we learn, and that is through studying on our own and some of the techniques that we use.
Yeah, so in our case, we don't really have a textbook or a classroom or a teacher telling us what to study next.
Right.
And I know for me, at times, that it's still overwhelming, and I have a fairly high level in the language that I'm learning. But for you, what was it like when you decided to start studying Spanish without a classroom, without any guidance? What was it like for you initially?
Initially, it was kind of nerve-wracking or frustrating. I didn't know where to begin. And I thought, well, the internet, of course, is, a place where you can go to try to find things to help you out. But it's so full, jam-packed of information and resources, I didn't know which one to pick. So luckily, I have you, and you kind of guided me into number of different resources that I could use and select from that were maybe the most useful.
So for me, I definitely have different resources that I've found over the course of time, and I have also studied a lot of things that I really felt they did not benefit me. So it's kind of like I filtered out all of the useless things, and I was trying to give these resources to Curtis, the ones that had helped me the most. Now, there is one resource in particular that I really, really like using, and it's actually the inspiration for why we started Real English Conversations, is because I really liked the style that they had for their resources. So what I do is I listen to audio in Spanish, because I'm learning Spanish, and they actually have a transcription of the audio. And I go through the transcription and extract out new vocabulary that I didn't know, new phrases, words, expressions, and things like that. I'm basically analyzing conversation, analyzing the language,
right,
and trying to make connections for how, the grammar is without studying in a textbook as much. So I've kind of passed this technique on to Curtis and taught him it's more than just reading something and trying to figure out the general idea. How do you read things now?
I read things in a totally different way. I try to sound things out.
So you're actually speaking while you're reading?
Yep, and I read out loud, which I can hear how the word is pronounced.
You're getting your mouth used to making the noises or the sounds.
Yeah, by reading out loud, I can try to hear if I'm pronouncing things correctly or not.
Are you looking at anything else aside from pronunciation when you're reading?
I'm looking at how the word is spelled and how the sentences are connected.
Okay, so you're trying to also analyze the grammar a little bit now.
A little bit, yeah.
Of course, some of it's overwhelming because when you're a beginner, you just haven't seen enough. It's almost like you have to develop a foundation before you can start understanding some of the more complicated stuff.
Yeah, I like to try to make things fun for myself too. Like learning a language is fun, but I want to keep the motivation high where I'm using something, for example, I like music, and I'll try to look up lyrics to a song and, learn from the lyrics, learn those lyrics and find out what the song is actually about, and maybe use those as examples for future conversations.
Yeah, and I also use this technique as well. I try to focus on doing things that I enjoy doing. So, for example, maybe yesterday I was really just focusing on studying my vocabulary, and I don't know, I ended up spending 2 or 3 hours focusing on vocabulary. And, you know, it's like the last thing I want to look at the next day. So sometimes I'm driving around in my car and there's a song that comes on and I think, oh yeah, you know, I really want to know the lyrics to this song. I like the song, but, you know, I really still can't understand what it's about. So later when I go home, I'm going to look up the lyrics and try to have a better idea what the song is about. And then when I hear it in the future, I'm going to hear the new words that I've learned. And it's kind of a fun way. So sometimes for me, it's listening to music. Sometimes I feel like talking to someone. Sometimes I want to watch a TV show.
Yeah, I like watching TV shows. That's good too. And
with subtitles.
Yeah.
I find. Unless your listening skills are very, very high, which if you're listening to our podcast, they probably are. But unless your listening skills are really, really high, I really recommend watching shows with subtitles.
Right. At this point, I still need the subtitles.
I do too. But I also think that subconsciously something happens in your mind where if your ears are not able to pick up the sound on its own, your eyes can use the words that are on the screen and you are making a connection. So I think that it's a really good technique. Okay, so this kind of brings us into the 4 components of language learning. And what are those?
The 4 components are reading, writing, speaking, and listening.
And in your opinion, what do you think is the most difficult one?
The most difficult one is probably writing.
For you, it's writing.
For me, yeah.
I think that your writing is pretty good. Do you know why I say that?
No.
Because when I say a new word, you're able to listen to the sounds of the word and you're able to write it down on a piece of paper without me telling you how it's spelled.
Then I can usually spell it correctly.
Yeah.
Speaking usually is probably the hardest.
For most people, speaking is the hardest. It's good that it's not the hardest for you. Right. And we'll explain a little bit later in the podcast about an experiment we've done and why Curtis's answer probably wasn't speaking. I'm sure if we asked him 3 weeks ago, it would have been.
Yeah, for sure.
What is really interesting about these 4 components is when we are babies and we're born into the world, we're born without a language, right?
Correct. We don't know how to say anything.
No, and if we live in a monolingual house, it's, you know, we learn whatever language our parents are speaking. So for us, it was English. And as babies, the only skills that we have are speaking and listening. Obviously, listening comes first, speaking comes second. And then as we move into school, grade 1, grade 2.
That's where the reading and writing aspect comes in.
That's right. However, as adults learning a language, we have a very different environment that we're learning the language in, and it really affects the process that we move through these 4 components of language learning. So as an adult, typically, or for students of a classroom, or people studying on their own, I would say as well, that don't have an opportunity to be hearing the language and be able to reply through speech. Which skills, obviously, are the first ones that they develop? They develop
reading and writing skills.
Because those are things that you can do at home, and you look at a textbook and you read the thing, you know, the question, and you write an answer, and it's a very low risk exercise. So also, as adults, I believe that our eyes and the visual aspect of things is a very powerful way for us to learn things quickly. And we shouldn't ignore that.
Not
right?
by any means.
It's a tool. I think that we should use it, but we have to be mindful of the fact that speaking typically is the hardest skill to develop. Therefore, it needs lots of attention and listening as well in real life situations. Not just listening to an audio. Like if you guys are listening to this audio, okay, you're not in a position where you need to respond. But if I was to ask you a question, for example, what is the skill out of these 4 skills that you really need to work on the most right now? What is your weakest skill? Tell me what it is and why. Pause the audio, give me an answer. Now you've got to speak, right? This is what conversation does to you. This is, you have to listen to what I just said. You can't hit the rewind button. You need to
output.
You need to output an answer right away, and it needs to be immediate, and that's where the listening and speaking skills, come in. So anyway, when carrying on with the parent figure,
right?
What happens when you're a baby? How do you learn?
You mimic sounds that you hear. You're basically like a human tape recorder.
Yeah, or a parrot sometimes. Because parrots, if you teach them a word over a period of time, they'll start being able to say that word.
If they hear it over and over again, they'll try to repeat it back in the same way.
But in the same sentence or the same idea, what... Are we just saying random words that we hear when we're babies? Or we know what it is. Like, we know what bottle is. Or mama or papa, right? So you're hearing the word over and over and over again, right?
Yes.
And eventually what happens?
You make that connection.
And you do that over and over again. Yeah. Do you think that babies understand what a word means before they're able to say it?
It's possible.
I think so, because they don't have the training with their mouth and their tongue to produce the sound the way that we do. This is where accents are formed, right?
Right, that's true.
As adults, we already have an accent with whatever language we have learned. And when we're trying to learn a new language, we're always fighting against our accent, right? Mm-hmm. Our own natural tendencies to pronounce things similar to the language we already speak.
Because when you're born and when you're growing up, you're taking that accent of your family.
You're repeating how your parents repeat the words, because you don't have a book to refer to with spelling. Right. You don't learn that first, right? So it's really interesting how as adults we can actually use visual aids. Like we can actually read and make connections with sounds and stuff like that. So I think that that's an advantage in that way. And most of us don't have that parent. So when we mispronounce something in the language that we're learning, we just don't know. Because we don't have somebody, like our mom, correcting us.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why we develop a foreign accent and all of the other things. So as an adult, learning languages is definitely really differently. All right.
So we want to talk about a really cool experiment that we've started to do, which has been almost like the only thing that has worked for me to progress me a little bit further faster.
Yeah, because Curtis had a bit of a problem with studying consistently. He really likes to study for 3 hours at a time, 1 day a week. And unfortunately, by the time he looks at the material again, he's forgotten 95% of what he learned.
Completely on
like, you might as well have just studied for 10 minutes once a week. You would have probably learned the same amount.
It was completely ineffective.
Yeah. So I was struggling a little bit. If you guys are following our blogs, you're going to know. But I was struggling a little bit with the confident speaking. Mm-hmm. I felt really uncomfortable speaking, even after months and months of language exchanges. And what did we decide to do? We
decided, well, let's try to speak only in the language that we're learning.
Do you remember where we got the idea from?
Oh, we got the idea from what is called a polyglot who knows a ton of different languages.
A polyglot is someone who knows multiple languages. So It was actually Benny Lewis and his blog. It's a really interesting blog if you guys don't know about it. And he basically was really having a hard time learning his second language. He knew English and he was trying to learn Spanish. And he found after immersing himself for 6 months in Spain, he still had a very, very poor level of Spanish.
Yeah.
He was living there, studying, went to courses, no success. So he's decided to stop speaking English. Okay, so unfortunately, living in an English-speaking country is contradictory to the language we're trying to learn, because we have a job which we have to communicate in English, and also our website and this podcast is in English.
But with each other learning the same language, we realized we can immerse ourselves with ourselves at home or when we're talking to each other on the phone.
Our text messages.
Yeah, anytime that we connect or communicate with each other.
Outside of this podcast, it's in Spanish.
It is in Spanish, yeah.
And how was it for the first few days?
First few days was a struggle for me because I was not really...
You didn't have any words.
No.
But what happened after a few days?
After a few days, I learned words and phrases and remembered the connecting words, and I started to join everything together.
How were you learning new vocabulary, though?
By you. Mm-hmm. You were saying new words in different tenses, and I found myself picking up on those and using them and repeating them back to you.
Yeah, it wasn't immediately the same day, but maybe you heard the word like 10 times.
Yeah, and sometimes I hear a word and it sounds really cool and I get a real liking for it. Mm-hmm. So I want to use it all the time.
You want to know what it means, and a lot of the time I'm not explaining to you what the word means. It's through context you start to
put things together and realize, oh yeah, that's what she meant by that.
Yeah, so anyway, we've been doing this now for a little more than 3 weeks. I think we're on day 24 right now.
Yeah.
And what has it done for your speaking?
It's restored a ton of confidence in me that I can really put more into the language and get more out of it. Mm-hmm. Just from the simple speaking it every day. The
common phrases of the household, right?
Yeah.
Like the, hey, what do you want for breakfast? I'm leaving the house now. I have an appointment to be at for 11 o'clock. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Can you do a bank deposit? Just really...
Everyday situations. And I feel that this part is what's missing from the classroom. Right.
So if you guys have the opportunity to do this with somebody, I highly recommend that you do it. You will see an amazing progression in your English. It'll be the fastest progression you have ever imagined possible.
Yeah, and if you want to use it with some of the other resources and stuff.
Oh, of course. You're going to continue studying. Because you get frustrated, right? With not being able to say certain things, and you want to learn more, so you're better at communicating.
Right, and use it with a resource like Real English Conversations.
That's right, yeah, our resource. But also, if you're going to a country to do an immersion, I think it's really important that you maybe decide to do like a volunteer excursion or something like that.
Yeah.
Or if you can, get a part-time job, because going to the market, every couple days, or having an interaction at a restaurant or something like that, it's not enough. You need to use the language to the most that you can, every opportunity that you get. Mm-hmm. And that's where the magic kind of happens with all of a sudden verb conjugations and stuff. You don't have to think about them anymore.
Right.
And if you don't have the opportunity to practice with a partner in your house or a roommate or something like that, I would just suggest doing a lot of conversation exchanges and just trying to use what you know every single day if you can.
Talking to yourself is another fantastic idea to do that.
Yep.
You might look a little funny or strange.
Yeah, talk to yourself in your car, talk to your cat, talk to whatever. It doesn't matter. All right, so that's it for this episode. We've got the Real English tip coming up. Real English conversational tip.
Okay, so for today's Real English tip, we're going to give you a few examples of what to say when you're late.
Right. So maybe you took too long to leave the house. And you're on your way to your friend's house and she's calling you. Where are you?
Sorry about that. I lost track of time. I'm running late.
Yeah, so this is a little bit strange. We say that we're running late or we're running behind.
Yeah. or we're behind schedule.
Yeah, behind schedule is used more for a work situation. So what's another example of how you might say that you're running behind?
So, for example, I'm running some errands and doing a couple things around town. Don't realize what time it is. I would say, oh, I'm running behind.
Yeah. Maybe you have to get to the bank before 4 o'clock and you're looking at your watch going, woof, I'm really running behind. I don't know if I'm going to make it to the bank.
I've got 5 minutes.
Right. And I'm behind schedule, I think is for example, with these podcasts and the videos that we release, right, I try to be ahead of schedule by 2 weeks. So next week's podcast is already ready to go.
Right. And if it's not, you're running behind
schedule. I'm running behind schedule. So it's I'm behind schedule, I'm running behind schedule. Those are totally normal to say. So if someone calls you up and they're wondering where you are, you're going to say,
I'm running behind. Or I'm running late.
And if your boss asks you why your project is not done, you're going to say,
I'm just a bit behind schedule here.
Sorry about that. I'll get to it right away. Make sure that you come to our website, become a premium member. You're going to get a complete transcript to every single conversation that we've done. As we mentioned in this podcast, this is extremely effective for increasing your vocabulary. You can analyze conversations.
You can read along
while you're listening to make connections to our accent and hearing exactly what we're saying.
Right.
And you can do that by becoming a premium member. We'll see you next time. If you've enjoyed this video, please take a moment and hit the like button to show your support for us. We'd also like to see you subscribe to our channel. There's a link either below the video, or you can click on the subscribe button at the top right-hand corner of this video. We'd love to hear your questions or comments about this episode. Feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below this video. Thanks for listening. We'll see you guys next time.